If you haven't been with us, we've been going verse by verse through the Sermon on the Mount all year. And we only have about 3 more messages to complete Matthew 5, 6, and 7. But tonight, I'm going to take a break from the Sermon on the Mount for this holiday weekend because I feel like the Lord dropped something in my heart early last week as I was thinking about Thanksgiving and giving thanks. I felt I had this phrase, what is the opposite of Thanksgiving? And it just went through my mind like that. And of course, unthankfulness, unthanksgiving would be an opposite. You know, the Bible says in the last days, perilous times will come. And then the Apostle Paul lists a whole bunch of unattractive characteristics of the last days. It says that men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boastful, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents. And right in the middle of the list, unthankful, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers. Is that in the news? Or slanderous, without self-control, fierce, brutal, despisers of those that are good, traitors, high-minded, conceited, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Right in the middle of all that list is unthankfulness. There are 194 nations in the world, according to the research I just did. As far as I know, we're the only one that has a day set aside for the people to thank God for our blessings. But unfortunately, an honest look at our culture today reveals the spirit of thanksgiving has been largely displaced by an opposite spirit. And I want to talk to you tonight about that spirit, which is the spirit of entitlement. The spirit of entitlement. Let me say it another way. The opposite of the spirit of thanksgiving is a certain kind of unthankfulness. It's a spirit of entitlement. Motivational speaker Oliver Cooper says, in today's society, there's an entitlement mentality, the sense of having a right to something not earned. This right exists regardless of one having to do anything. It's a belief in something for nothing. If you look up entitlement in the dictionary, you know I'm a word guy, so I always like to, even if you think you know what something means, it's always great to look it up in the dictionary and see what it means. Entitlement is the belief that one is deserving of or entitled to certain privileges. Most people would acknowledge that America is a blessed nation. The poorest people in America would be considered rich in almost any other country in the world. The average household income in the world is less than $3,000 a year. Think about that. Most people in the world live on $250 a month. The average household income in the United States is $43,000 a year, and that's over 14 times the world's average. Of the 60 million richest people in the world, half of them live in the United States. Think about that. You would think we'd be on our knees every day thanking God, not just at the holiday, but all year. But instead of on our knees to thank God, we have multimillionaire professional athletes on their knees refusing to stand for the national anthem because they're entitled to their freedom of speech. We're witnessing a war today between gratitude and entitlement for the very soul of our nation. Make no mistake, entitlement is the opposite of gratitude or thanksgiving. We can never be really grateful for our blessings if deep down we think that we are entitled to them and that we deserve them. Entitlement kills gratitude. It's the opposite of thanksgiving. It actually displaces thanksgiving. I love John Townsend, who writes books. He's a Christian psychiatrist. I don't know he uses that term, but he and Dr. Henry Cloud have written some great books that I've recommended to many people. He said, gratitude and entitlement cannot coexist in the same brain. In other words, you can't be truly grateful and feel entitled at the same time. Pete Wilson, former governor of California, said, an attitude of entitlement is inversely related to one of gratitude. I love that. Inversely related. In other words, as your entitlement goes up, your sense of gratitude goes down. I can tell you're really getting into this. This simply means that the more entitled we feel, the less grateful we are. You see, these two things determine the kind of heart we have. Paul Gibbons said, feeling entitled is the opposite of feeling grateful. Gratitude opens the heart. Entitlement closes it. Have you ever seen so much division in our wonderful country as we have today? So much hatred, so many groups of people who have closed their hearts toward other groups of people. I believe it's because we have subtly moved more and more into a spirit of entitlement. And it's closing our hearts to others. America's forefathers were grateful men. They were men of prayer. They were men of thanksgiving. But today, we don't hear as much about that as we hear about, it's all about rights. Civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, right of free speech, right to bear arms. And it's almost like there's all these different groups that are so mindful of the rights or entitlements that they feel they must stand up for, that we've lost our ability to get along. Steve Maraboli is a motivational speaker, and he said this: when we replace a sense of service and gratitude with a sense of entitlement and expectation, we quickly see the demise of our relationships, our society, and our economy. That's a mouthful. It means that when we move into entitlement, it begins to adversely affect our relationships, our society as a whole, and our economy. I've been personally very, very aware this last couple of years of how a spirit of entitlement can separate families. If someone feels entitled or their needs are not being met, their expectations aren't being met, that it can be very, very disruptive. He says it can bring the demise of our economy. Have you ever seen so many lawsuits? America is now known as the most litigious nation on earth, with lawsuits, everything from hot spill coffee to neighbors' rights. This is a word you need to know, litigious. It means unreasonably prone to go to law, to settle disputes. We get the word litigate from that same root word. We spend more money on lawsuits than any other industrialized country in the world. We have more lawyers per capita than any other nation on earth. One of my heroes, Pastor John Ortberg, says, quote, the bigger our sense of entitlement, the smaller our sense of gratitude. Our entitlement mindset has led to a proliferation of lawsuits. When we don't get something we want, we sue somebody. For example, the San Francisco Giants were once sued for passing out Father's Day gifts to men only. Well, I guess that's what you're going to get in San Francisco, okay? But it's going on everywhere. God himself established civil government. I do not believe going to court for a Christian is a sin, but the New Testament clearly teaches it's to be the last resort. It's absolutely the last of our choices. We should do everything to resolve our issues. Paul even said it's better for you just to suffer harm or suffer loss than to take a brother to court. But there are cases, and the Bible clearly says that God establishes civil government for our good. That is a biblical principle. But our courts are now crammed with frivolous lawsuits over imagined entitlements, an epidemic that's getting worse. And let me just speak from a father's heart, okay? Someone who is older, a father, a grandfather. I am very concerned about the effect this is having on our youth, on our young people, the generation that's coming up behind us. This could be the most entitled generation in human history. Even the world is now recognizing how the spirit of entitlement is damaging our young people. Richard Kirshenbaum is a multimillionaire advertising agency executive, and he's a jet setter. But he says this, quote, the rampant disease of entitlement is a contagious, insidious state of mind that has infected a whole generation of young people. Even our liberal American colleges are noticing the problem. Dr. Robert Edmonds of the University of California says, quote, gratitude is especially rare among middle-class high school and college students who have grown up in a world that revolves around them, one that allows them to build a platform via social media without displaying any value, a world that repeatedly communicates they are awesome and deserve trophies just for playing. When I heard of that a few years ago, it started becoming a practice where little league teams and different, junior leagues, they give trophies to everybody. I mean, you just get a trophy for showing up. You could get beat 49-0, in the game, and be miserably lose, but you still get a trophy because they feel like you're entitled to not feel bad. You have heard of that, haven't you? I'm not the only one. And I understand that we need to speak positive things to our children. We know the damage we can do, our words can have on our children. And we want to avoid that. I'm not talking about that, but I have a little bit of a problem with just continually telling them they're princesses and they're little kings, and, especially when there's not a performance of any kind. And somebody said, well, you must be one of those guys into works or something. No, I'm really not. I mean, but when you continually praise a child and tell them how awesome they are and how beautiful they are and how wonderful they are, and you can't even get them to make the bed, then it's a little bit of an issue. And I could go into some other research I found that says that the problem parents have today getting their kids to buy anything, do anything around the house. They don't make up their bed, pick up their clothes. And they have tied it into this whole thing of you're so special, you're so entitled. Let mama do all the work. It's just not healthy. Mormonism is a cult, but they are known for high family values. And I found something that Jeff Murdoch wrote in Meridian magazine, which is their magazine. Youth today are growing up with a false sense of entitlement and are oppositional to responsibility and ownership over their values, decisions, goals, and relationships. Left unchecked, they will become short-sighted, self-centered, and unable to make the connection between effort and reward. Look, let's get this straight. We're saved by grace through faith, not by works. Hello? We understand that. But there is a law of sowing and reaping that God has worked into the world. If we don't raise a generation to understand that there is a principle of work and reward, we're not going to do them any good. We're not going to help them. I was telling someone before church, when the Lord dropped this on my heart this week, are y'all doing okay? Are you breathing? Okay, some of you are like, where's the door? When the Lord dropped this on my heart, it was just like that. It was like, what's the opposite of Thanksgiving? That's all I heard. And I got to thinking about it. I said, well, unthanksgiving or unthankful. But then that thing of the spirit of entitlement came. And I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to go on the internet and see. Folks, you would not believe how much is out there about this problem. How much is being written about it. Not just by the church. Matter of fact, most of it's being written by the world because they are recognizing the problem on the high school and college campuses and in the political arena and with our young people. And actually now they've discovered there's a link between entitlement and narcissism, which is self-love. Alethea Luna, she's a New Age writer, but I think she's got this right. Entitlement is a malignant form of self-love because it harms the people around us, which indirectly harms us in the long term. Entitlement is established in the belief that we are the center of the universe. And if the universe doesn't meet our needs and desires, all hell will break loose. You know, our kids, thankfully, are grown, have their own kids. And raising kids is a huge responsibility. And it ain't easy. And I think any parent would say that. At the same time, if we don't do our job well, I mean, if you have a child, I observe now other people's kids, and I see things at the mall or in a line somewhere, and it's bizarre. I mean, do kids understand that when you're talking to another adult, that they are not to stand there and pull your pants off until you give them attention? Because a child that has an entitlement like that has probably been trained that they're wonderful and great, and my whole world turns around you, and then so you can't even carry on a conversation. Of course, none of you have that, but I'm just saying. Other people. This is for people out there. Okay. Again, Steve Maraboli, a sense of entitlement is a cancerous thought process that's void of gratitude and can be deadly to our relationships. I've seen some well-meaning parents who bail their children out of financial difficulty over and over and over and over again, with tens of thousands of dollars sometime and end up with kids who resent them anyway. Because at some point, you can never keep up with their expectation of what they are entitled to from you. I know it's quiet, but it's true. What can I say? Come here, you'll hear the truth. Am I now become your enemy because I tell you the truth? That's what Paul asked one time. Sometime I feel that way. Listen, we ought to help our kids. Listen, I think that's why God blesses us, so we can get in there. And there are times when it's legitimate. You need to help your kids. There's times when that's what God has blessed you for. But believe me, if you see a pattern of continual poor performance that produces financial crises over and over again, and you are continually stepping in there and bailing them out, you're not helping them. Actually, you're empowering them. You're enabling them to not change. Well, I sure thought I'd get some more amens than this. Thank you. Come right up to the front row. Would you like to be on the church board? I am amazed, and I guess because I've been working on this message, but just in my inner relationships out, just interpersonal things, the exchanges, it's amazing to see how many people don't say thank you anymore. You notice that? I mean, there were two, and I won't get into details, but 2 times this week I went out of my way to do something for somebody I didn't have to do. They certainly didn't deserve it. I just did it because I wanted to be a servant, and not a thank you. I kept waiting, not a thank you. I can tell how kids are doing by whether they can say thank you or not. Dr. Tim Elmore, great Christian writer, says research indicates that today's students must give up a victim mentality and overcome a sense of entitlement and deservedness. Think for a moment. When someone feels entitled to something, there's little need for gratitude. I don't need to thank someone. I deserve that gift. In fact, these people are lucky to have me around. I'm amazing. Let me give you a few checkpoints, and I'll let you go early tonight. First, do we understand the danger of spoiling our children? That they might grow up to be the people described by Professor Sarah Churchill. People who are given whatever they want soon develop a sense of entitlement and rapidly lose their sense of proportion. I actually heard some ministers' kids, overheard one, this is years ago. They were arguing about which 5-star hotel was the best to stay in. Oh yeah. Well, we stay at the Four Seasons. Oh, the Four Seasons. The Ritz-Carlton. That's the place. And then another one said, we like the Anatole in Dallas. I'm sitting there going, you ought to be in a Best Western. That's losing your sense of proportion. You see, if you grow up rich or entitled or in a place where you feel that you deserve everything without doing anything for it, just because you are, then you lose your appreciation for other people and how other people live and what they go through. Second question, do we see how the so-called liberal or progressive political agenda uses entitlement to win elections, promising more and more free stuff just because you're entitled to it? One of my heroes, Alveda King, the niece of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King, says, let's be honest about this. The liberal agenda with failed stimulus plans and government entitlement programs is crippling our economy and our quality of life. Thank you, Alvita. Tune in. Beloved, you and I are supposed to be salt and light in the earth. We're supposed to be involved in the politics of our day. We don't look for politics to save us, but God has placed us in a great country that's losing its greatness. And if the church does not stand up and speak out as the prophetic voice of God, holding government accountable, as we did in the early days of the nation, then we can expect more of the same. The latest one is, and this has just evolved over the last few years, you're entitled to health care. Who says that? I read the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. You're entitled. Now, these are your entitlements: to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not happiness. You don't have the right to happiness. You have the right in America to pursue happiness, which is what makes us great. America's a land of the free, where you can improve your position through hard work and service. That's what makes us great. Not to be sit around and told that we're just because we have other things that they're adding onto so they can get elected, like free health care. Beloved, there's nothing. You are not entitled to free health care, and neither am I. Be nice. When will we stop believing these dishonest politicians who seek to get elected by promising us more free stuff? Scott Rasmussen, the pollster, says, quote, the entitlement mentality is bankrupting America. If we realize that the abuse of women, here's another one. I might as well get right into the news. There we go with health care. How about this abuse of these women that's now everywhere? I mean, it's in Hollywood, it's in Washington, it's in show business. Don't believe it's not going on right in our city. What is with these men? There's a male entitlement. And they've written about this. They've researched this. Jackson Kratz, a psychologist, says, quote, elite athletes, and he uses them as an example, or men in powerful positions learn entitlement. They believe they're entitled to have women serve their needs. It's part of being a man. It's the cultural construction of masculinity. Are you kidding me? Thank God for Jesus, who says when you get married, you lay down your life for your wife, as Christ laid down his life for the church. That's not entitlement. That's a call to service. Grace is the cornerstone of our Christian life. Amen. That's the one area where you get something you don't deserve. We don't deserve to be saved. It's a free gift. It's based strictly on the love of God, the forgiveness of God, no performance involved. That is legitimate. And if you were here for the first Sermon on the Mount message back in early January, the whole sermon begins. Remember what the first verse was? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Thank you. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We talked at length about poor in spirit. That's the opposite of entitlement. That's a sense of humility. That's a constant awareness of how poor we are before God, of our ability to do anything that would merit or earn our salvation or keep us saved. Poor in spirit, Tim Keller says, means that you're deeply in debt before God and you have no ability to even begin to redeem yourself. God's free generosity to you at infinite cost to him was the only thing that saved you. And that's what produces thanksgiving. On the other side, you believe that God owes you things. He ought to answer your prayers and bless you for the many good things you've done. You feel you've earned a certain standing with God through your hard work. You may even believe that the success and the resources you have are primarily due to your own energy or industry. Grateful people are happy people. Entitled people can never be happy. Check this out in your own life. Stephen Atchison. Successful people have a sense of gratitude. Unsuccessful people have a sense of entitlement. So God let the church be the most grateful people on earth. David said in 2 Samuel 22, therefore I will give thanks to thee, O Lord, among the nations. The word nations there is the heathen. I will give thanks to you among the nations. The greatest witness you and I can have as believers to the world. To an entitled world, the greatest salt and light we can be is to be grateful, thankful, continually humble before God. Setting an example of what it means to be grateful. And it's every believer's job to grow up into this. And I want to tell you something. Nobody can do this for you. This is something every one of us has to develop. Can you say amen? This didn't even fit in the I just love this so much. Something Abraham Lincoln said, and I'll close with this, we can go. You have to do your own growing, no matter how tall your grandfather was. Amen?